The Dallas Cowboys had a very productive draft over the weekend. We will break it down next.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by the all-new 2025 Nissan Armada. Stay tuned for the Armada draft pick of the week later in the show. Welcome back. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Joining me today, as always, is Landon McCool. You can follow him on Twitter at McCoolBCB. On today's show, we're going to break down the Dallas Cowboys 2025 draft class. If you'd like to hear our instant reactions to the Tyler Booker selection, go check out that podcast. It's already in your podcast feeds. It's also available on YouTube in the live section. Landon and I also did a bonus show that's available in your podcast feeds after night 2 of the draft. So go check that out. But Landon, let's start on day 2. We've talked a lot about Tyler Booker, but let's start on day 2. Cowboys went and got Donovan Ezaraku, the edge rusher from Boston College, who we both liked a lot coming into the draft. What are your thoughts now on that pick after you've had a couple days to sit back and do some more digging?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just a really big fan of it, just because I think what it does is that it gives a lot, so even more teeth to a defense that was kind of teetering around the edge of being, well, like this could be a really good collection of players, or it's tough to know exactly, if they've got enough. I feel like with Ezaraku added to this pass rushing group, now you've got some real dangerous pass rush, right? You've added Osa inside. I think you added Thomas to give you kind of some more rotation at the under tackle position. And then, you've got Sam Williams coming back. You've got Nealon in year 2. You re-signed Dante Fowler, who was a 10-sack guy last year for Commanders, so he still has something. And now you've added Ezaraku as the other guy who I think, most folks probably had graded as close to a bottom of the first rounder. I think he could be potentially a guy who comes in and eventually is giving you 10 sacks. I mean, I think he's that kind of impact guy. So I think at the very least, you've really made your pass rush that much more frightening and that much more difficult. And I think that also really in turn kind of helps the back end of your defense a lot too, right? With this kind of renewed pass rush, with more waves of pass rush coming, it puts a little relief on the cornerback position, which tend to be a little bit problematic, at the end of the season, especially as you got all those injuries. So adding some pass rushers, I think, it raises the floor of the defensive lineman, but I think it raises the floor of the defense overall.
So you know how much I love the tackle for loss per game stat. Like, it's one of my favorites when it comes to evaluating edge rushers. And Ezaraku just blows by that. I mean, he had just a ridiculous amount of production. But I went back and I looked at the players since 2000, Landon, that had at least 1.5 tackles for loss per game, that had at least an 8.00 RAS, the relative athletic score. So again, you're talking about production, good athlete, and played at a Power 5 school. Here's the list: Myles Garrett, Chase Young, Aiden Hutchinson, Bradley Chubb, Harold Landry, Gregory Rousseau, Abdul Carter, Donovan Ezaraku, Josh Allen, Liatu Latu. And now if you remove the Power 5 school of it and you look at some of the smaller school guys, DeMarcus Ware, Hassan Reddick, Alex Highsmith.
Wow.
I mean, that's a pretty good list to be on if you're Donovan, right? Like, productive, athletic, big time school. And you see it on his tape. I mean, he just is whooping all of these tackles he's going against. Maybe because of the lack of size, he can't be your number 1 edge rusher. But who cares when you have Micah Parsons on the other side?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing here, and probably the reason he fell a little bit, is exactly that, right? You kind of have to. He has traits that are incredibly valuable, but you kind of have to work it in. You have to figure out how to deploy him. You don't want to expose him in situations where he's going to get crushed by a large tackle in the run game. So you do have to be a little bit careful early on how you deploy him. But I mean, this is the typical bendy athlete with long arms who could run underneath the table. He's got some skill already, some hand technique already going into the NFL. Yeah, these are the kind of guys who really, it feels like if he was drafted like 6 years ago, this guy's a no-brainer first round, top 15 pick probably, just because this was the trend not too long ago for pass rushers. It seems like the trend is kind of moving back towards bigger body folks as the run game becomes more prevalent, but that doesn't mean that there isn't an incredible place for guys like this on passing downs as he learns to play the run a little bit better.
Should also mention, I forgot to say this. Will Anderson and Max Crosby are also on that list of young players who put up those.
Pretty good list. Pretty good list.
So A with that selection. Love Donovan Ezaraku. Let's talk about the Cowboys' third round pick, Shavon Revel. I'm a big fan. I thought the second round might be a little rich because there's a chance you're going to have to wait on him, or maybe he's not 100% by the time the season starts. But Landon, when we're talking about the third round here, like this is where you gamble on the elite athletes from smaller schools.
Yeah, and this is a guy that, like, I really do believe he doesn't get this injury. Especially in this class, we're talking about him as an easy first rounder, right?
Easy. Yeah.
This highly thought of player coming into the season, right? Like after really struggling just to get into college football, he was a junior college guy. I'm sure we've all heard the stories, working overnight shift in Amazon, had to, get up early in the morning to go try out for ECU, made the team. The rest is kind of history. Goes into the 2024 season, got a ton of offers from Division I schools, turned them all down because he wanted to show loyalty to the school that picked him up originally from his job at Amazon. And then unfortunately, early in the season tore his ACL. The good news about the injury, though, is that it was a clean tear. So it's about as good, as easy to recover from ACL as you can possibly hope for, to the point where it does seem like, based on what we heard from the Joneses and Will McClay and Shotty in the post-draft press conference, that he is likely to be the one to be back from his knee injury first, before in between him and Diggs. So they're thinking that likely he'll start the training camp session and OTAs on PUP, but coming off of PUP before training camp is over and before the regular season. And just a reminder about the rules there: when you're on training camp PUP, you can come off at any time once you pass your physical. If you are put on regular season PUP, you first have to be put on training season PUP and then go all the way through training season on PUP. And then once you're put on regular season PUP, you are out for the first 4 games of the season. So the hope is that they can avoid that regular season PUP and that they can, work him back in a timely enough manner that.
But even if he is,
comfortable.
it's 4 games out of 8.
Oh yeah.
Now, what? How many was it? 68 potential games during a rookie contract. It's not that big of a deal.
I'm certainly not worried about it. Certainly not like, anything that's gonna, make me feel less about the grade of this pick at all. More just to kind of clear up this very specific circumstance, because I know a lot of Cowboys fans had questions about the timing between Diggs and Revel's situation. But yeah,
then it's like,
what a steal, dude! Like, it's just absolutely ridiculous. Like, you just don't find guys with this level of talent and physicality and athletic traits in the third round, like, unless they're injured.
Part of me even feels like if he were fully healthy, I don't know if he's starting right away, because I don't know if the Cowboys would like to put a third round pick from East Carolina on the field, like in weeks 1, 2, and 3. Maybe they would, but I think that's kind of my thought process here is like, I'm just not going to be stressed if your third round pick isn't ready for week 1. It's not big of a deal. What the hope is that by the time we get to November, December, January is when he starts to really play like the player we saw early in 2024. And again, I think this is more of a 2026 pick, because Bland's contract is up, Deron Bland, after this year. Cowboys can get out of Trayvon Diggs' contract. They probably won't do both. They'll probably pick one of the two.
That's right.
And then with the idea that Revel can be the starter on the opposite side.
Yeah, and just to kind of speak towards the how they set themselves up to allow that, right? They've got Elam, they still have Carson, right? So even if they decide, hey, he's healthy, but we just don't want to like rush him into a game, there's no reason that you couldn't play 1 or 2 games with those guys out at corner and survive while you're making sure that your new stars is healthy and ready to get back, and that applies for Diggs too. So yeah, I think with this pick, the Cowboys have really set themselves up to handle that whole situation a whole lot better than they did previously, and on top of that, long-term wise, right? How to handle the Diggs Bland contract situation makes it a lot easier when you have a third corner that you feel confident about in the future.
All right, let's talk about day 3. The Cowboys finally get a running back, and maybe not the one that we expected. Let's break down all of their day 3 selections next. This episode is brought to you by Gametime. There's nothing like the atmosphere of an NBA playoff game. Every bucket, every defensive stop, every moment feels huge. It's electric in the arena, and with Gametime, you can be part of it without the stress of last-minute ticket hunting. Gametime makes it fast and easy to get playoff tickets, even when the demand is sky high. Prices on the app actually go down as tip-off gets closer, and their last-minute deals can save you up to 60% off. I love Gametime for so many different reasons, but one of my favorites is the all-in pricing, which means there's no surprise fees at checkout. What you pay is what you get. Plus, they have the panoramic view of your seating, so you know exactly what to expect when you get to your seats. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Let's discuss the Cowboys' day 3 selections. I want to mention before we get to the picks, they did trade their 4th rounder for Jonathan Mingo, so you kind of have to count him as part of this draft class. They also traded down a couple different times, one time getting Joe Mixon, a trade, one time trading down and getting Kyer Elam, and also getting Kenneth Murray. Now, those guys have been on the roster for a little bit now, but we should at least include them when it comes to this day 3 class. I want to start, though, at pick 149, Jaydon Blue. We expected this to be the spot the Cowboys drafted a running back after ignoring it in the first 2 rounds. I was shocked to see DJ Giddens available and for the Cowboys to pass on him for Jaydon Blue.
I think it kind of speaks actually to what they want to do, right? Like, to me, the pick was about securing. I think this is a running back by committee situation, right?
I think so as well.
I think that when we talked about this situation beforehand, we talked about the many different ways the Cowboys could attack this running back situation, right? We talked about they could go get somebody higher in the draft, make them more of the bell cow type featured back, right? Or if they wanted to wait, they could cobble together a running back by committee with a couple of these really talented running backs that we liked. But what did we talk about was the most important aspect, right? We talked the most important aspect about getting this running back room situation correct. And in the draft specifically is that you had to go get juice, right? You had to find a way to get some speed added to this running back room because the other types of running backs are available all day long. If you need to go get a running back who can get you 4 yards on blocked 4 yards, you could probably find those guys on the street for the most part, right? Or at least something close to that. A bigger bruiser guys, these guys are readily available, for via trade, via the free agent market, however you want to obtain these guys. Getting a running back who actually can function as a running back and give you real juice at the position, real speed, can threaten to score from anywhere. Those are rare traits, and they're harder to find. And really, the only place to get it is in the draft, right? And that's what the Cowboys got with Jaydon Blue, right? This is a guy who I think really very favorably compares to, maybe not exactly as a player, but how I think the Cowboys are going to be able to use him as Tony Pollard, right? He's a guy who is a receiving back. If you remember, the thing that made Tony special is that Tony was a former receiver who transferred to running back, who converted to running back at Memphis. And then the thing that really kind of separated him from a lot of those other converts from running back from wide receiver to running back is that he did the running back stuff really well. I think Nate Tice made a great comparison to Devon Achane from Miami, and I think that is a very good comparison where they have this elite speed, they have these bodies of receiving backs, but then you watch them run between the tackles and they have such great vision. I mean, Blue specifically has such great vision, and his eyes are so well tied to his feet that he can make moves in tight spaces and navigate those areas and run inside very effectively. So this is a great pick. I liked this route, and I understand a little bit why going this route over Giddens. I liked Giddens maybe a little bit less than you did, but my main thing here is that I felt like they got more juice from out of Blue, and the stuff that Giddens does well, you can replace that with the other running backs on this roster, and I think you're probably going to get a little bit higher highs and a little bit higher lows too by kind of piecing this together in a running back by committee instead of just relying solely on Jadyon at that point.
Yeah, I mean, I like Jaydon Blue a lot. Now, I agree he has to be a part of a committee, but let's talk about another one of their picks because I think a lot of these players are tied together.
Yes,
Phil Mafa, who they drafted in the 7th round from Clemson. Now he is a massive running back, 6'1", 234. He didn't run at the NFL Combine or his pro day, but according to NFL Draft Scout, which has like the spring times from the year before, 4.56 was his expected 40-yard dash, which is moving for somebody of his size. Now he's a little bit more linear. You're not going to see a bunch of jump cuts, but he reminds me a lot of like Leonard Fournette on the Buccaneers, like not the Jaguar one, but like the Leonard Fournette with Tampa, where you just need him to go downhill, catch some passes as an outlet receiver. That's what he can do.
Yeah, real quick on the not running and the speeds aspect of it. He had an ankle injury that he battled all year last year, especially near the end of the year, and I think that's why he didn't run is because he still is recovering. He didn't do any testing, if I'm not mistaken, so he still was recovering from that, and even. I think it was Shotty mentioned on the secret audio of his call, hey, it's going to be great to see you running healthy, So, so keep in mind when you're watching all this 2024 tape that he's not healthy. And he's running the way that he is not healthy. And I think you see it, right? He's physical. I mean, he's all those things that you want in those kind of bigger body backs. I thought, I again, love the smart guys giving me good comparisons just to kind of transcribe what our thoughts are here. Matt Waldman compared him or put him on the same spectrum as James Conner, and I really see that, right? And I wonder if Clayton Adams also doesn't really see that, right? A bigger body guy who can run with some patience, who maybe isn't long speed fast, but if I'm not mistaken, did he do his jumps? He may have done jumps. Did he do any of his jumps?
I don't have it in front of me, but
I kind of thought that he might have done some jumps that were actually impressive that he was able to do, but he just didn't want to do his authority. But anyways, I don't have time to look it up. Either way, this is a guy who's is a physical running back who can run through folks. The ankle injury, I think, shows you that kind of a lack of trying to like maybe kind of slip through or step through tackles in the 24 tape as much as you saw in the 2023 tape. But man, I mean, I think you pair this guy with what we just talked about with Blue, and that's quite a dynamic duo, I would say. I mean, look, he's a 7th round pick, so they're not a huge expectations, but I do
good chance he doesn't even make the roster.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think that he has the chance with his pedigree. Again, another captain guy that the Clemson coaches can't stop talking about, that sort of thing. So there is a chance that maybe these two pair and become a nice little duo. Otherwise, I think Javonte Williams and him are likely kind of competing for a spot, likely.
Any other day 3 picks stand out to you? I just want to mention Shamar James a little bit, who I saw at the Senior Bowl. He's actually one of the youngest players in the class. He doesn't turn 21 until like close, I think, middle of the summer, but really good in the one-on-one drills and coverage. I think that's where he's going to make his money in the NFL, is being able to cover tight ends. He's got small hands and short arms, so that's not great for a linebacker, but you're talking about somebody who I think has some coverage upside. And I want to also say really quickly, Matt Eberflus has a really good track record when it comes to
Yes, absolutely.
drafting and developing linebackers, whether that's Anthony Hitchens, Shaq Leonard in Indianapolis. He did a great job with the Chicago linebackers, even though those guys had a little bit more pedigree. If he likes Shamar James, I have no doubt that he's going to turn into a solid rotational linebacker.
Yeah, and I'll just mention Jay Toa. I think Toia. I'm sorry, is I think how you say it. Big body nose tackle that the Cowboys have been. We've been begging the Cowboys to draft for a long time. I mean, he's 330 plus. He's going to be a double team eater. He's going to eat blocks. He's going to help keep the linebackers clean. I think he can give you a little bit as a pocket pusher, maybe if you need to on passing on early downs. But for the most part, this is going to be a guy that's going to be part of the rotation at the nose tackle position. The fact that you got him in the 7th round is really a steal, because I do think that despite that, he is someone that is going to be able to give you snaps this year. As maybe not the starter, but I think as a rotational nose tackle could come in and spell some of these guys on rundowns. I think he has the requisite strength to kind of come in and provide you with something maybe right away.
Another very young player, 21.7 years old. Dane Brugler actually had him as his 116th player in the class.
Yeah.
So to get him in 217, again, you're not expecting somebody to come in and be a day one starter, but could he end up being the primary backup for Ozzie Smith? Sure, why not?
Absolutely, and I think that's what you're looking for. I mean, again, to get a 4th round graded guy basically in the 7th round, I mean that's good value, right? And I think when you're looking at what you have, what you plan on with doing with a guy that you have graded in the 4th round, part of a rotation, a guy that you hope that with a good offseason can contribute a little bit. I think those are the expectations for Toa as well.
All right, let's talk about the draft as a whole, because I got some interesting thoughts on this class. I know you do as well. We will get to that next. This episode is brought to you by Nissan. The Armada pick of the week is brought to you by our friends at Nissan and the all-new 2025 Nissan Armada. This week, we're highlighting the top pick from our draft, the one selection that truly stood out, the guy who showcased the strength and power to help hopefully push the Dallas Cowboys forward as we look ahead to the season. And this week's Armada and clear-cut top pick of the week, of course, is Tyler Booker, who power, durable, heavy duty, rugged. Those are all words that you can use to describe Tyler Booker. It's all words you can also use to describe the all new Nissan Armada. And when it comes to the Armada, they say go forth and conquer. And that's exactly what we hope Tyler Booker will do here in Dallas. It's clear that our top pick of the draft is out here ready to conquer the road ahead with confidence, just like you can in the all-new Nissan Armada or with any of their outstanding vehicles. Take the Nissan Armada, Rogue, or Pathfinder and go find your next big adventure and shop nissanusa.com. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NFL Scouting Show. The NFL draft is over, but the roster moves and news never stop. Hosts Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino will make you the most informed NFL fan this offseason. Find Locked On NFL Scouting on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. All right, Landon, as a whole, you sit back and you look at this draft class for the Cowboys. Maybe not quite what we expected, but what were your thoughts overall?
I think it was a really great draft. I mean, I think that they clearly have had a plan this offseason. They've been sticking to and following through with this plan to, look, they want to be a more physical football team. They want to be, again, I keep when I think about the 2024 season, I keep going back to that Lions game, right? I don't ever want to feel like that again. And I think that part of what was so terrible about that is that it just felt like we were just out physical as a football team across the board. And I feel like that has been the problem with this team at points before. To see them kind of come in here with a plan to kind of become a more physical football team, to be better against the run, to run the football better. I think that's all great coaches talk, and we hear it a lot, every season. But the difference I think this year is that we've seen them put those plans into action. They've put, we keep talking about making sure that you watch their feet and not their lips, right? I think when you see their feet, they're following the plans that they've talked about. Adding a physical tone setting, I think locker room changing guard to this team, adding a pass rusher who could come in and be the second best pass rusher on your team, maybe eventually be a guy that is worthy of being considered a duo with Parsons at some point, right? Adding offensive linemen and then some big hog molly defensive tackle and all of these, I think, and the two running backs, right? Like, I mean, obviously they're skill players, but they're still two running backs. I think all of this really points to a team that is looking to change the mentality of what it means to be, kind of a Dallas Cowboy now. Look, they still have a lot of work to do. I think that's going to be the bottom line for a lot of folks here is that they didn't fill the needs. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like we haven't been talking about the fact that wide receiver or secondary pass catching weapon isn't the biggest need. It has been. I think that the thing that folks need to remember, though, is that at a certain point, once the Cowboys got, past Tetro McMillan being gone, maybe they just didn't feel like that need could be filled in the first round. Maybe they didn't have the same level of confidence in guys like Golden or Egbuka to kind of do that. So I think that they pivoted. They took the best player on their board. And hopefully that doesn't mean that they're not going to solve the problem. That it's just they realized at that point they needed to solve the problem another way. So we'll obviously be monitoring the trade market. But as far as the draft class overall, it's hard to be mad about it because they took the best players on their board. They let the draft come to them. And then again, it just another step in line with an offseason plan that they dictated to us when they hired Brian Schottenheimer, more of their feet following their lips, which I think is an important step for the Dallas Cowboys.
It feels very similar to like the 2022 draft where they got their offensive lineman in round 1. That was Tyler Smith in 2022, Tyler Booker in 2025. In round 2 in 2022, they took Sam Williams, I believe, right? Who a lot of people had higher than that. The Cowboys took Donovan Ezaraku. And then but I remember in 2022, one of the biggest things coming into that draft was, okay, we have to find a wide receiver 2 to pair with CeeDee Lamb. They drafted Jalen Tolbert in round 3. They were hoping Brandon Cooks would fill that role, and it just wasn't enough. They got to the divisional round game. Tony Pollard got hurt, and all of a sudden they were just out of weapons. Like it was CeeDee Lamb, and that was it. I think this is, as a whole, a good draft for the Cowboys. Part of me wonders if it's just still not a needle mover, because as we get into this stage of Dak's career, it's going to be important to give him protection, just to be clear. Like that's going to be more important than ever as he starts to lose even more mobility. But I look at what some of these other teams have done surrounding their not so mobile quarterback with lots of weapons. I just wonder if, not in the draft, but just as a whole this offseason, the Cowboys kind of dropped the ball, not finding a better complement to CD.
I think I would push back. I mean, I do think you're right that they haven't maybe moved the needle in the passing game that they need to, but I think that they have very much moved the needle on this team. And I think it's a cumulative effect of all the things that we've talked about, not just, nibbling around the edges. And look, some of it we still got to go to training camp and see if any of this stuff that's true. Right. But so far, I think, would you agree that Schottenheimer has been pretty true to his word about what he's said that he wants to do and what they've kind of done so far?
Yeah, even so far as like saying they want to make sure they change the culture of the locker room. And even someone like Shamar James in the 5th round was a team captain. Booker was a team captain. Ezaraku was a team captain. Like they're pretty clearly targeting high character players. And I do think it's going to take a couple of years to maybe get the locker room and the culture where he wants it. At the same time, I just worry that they're ignoring one of the most important needs on the team right now.
I think what I'm getting at though is that I think we're in a spot where I feel like we're trusting, or at least I'm trusting Schottenheimer. He's shown me enough that I'm at least, piecemealing my trust with him right now. if we're to believe him, I think some of the other changes schematically that we're talking about, a renewed focus on the run game, a varied and multiple run game, more condensed formations. I think all of these things also, in their own way, also move the needle in the passing game, right? Like I think that, for instance, like Jonathan Mingo, right? Jonathan Mingo in the offense that we ran last year, kind of a static offense where he's lining up in one spot, maybe not motioning or not being lined up in a condensed formation. I have very little faith that he's going to be able to operate that. But if you put him in a condensed formation where he can get lost by a corner and he can run a slant, I have faith that he can catch a football and run with the football.
Sure.
So I think there are, and that's just an example. That's not like, oh, that's our wide receiver 2 solution. My point being that I think there are things that they have done that they are planning on doing that will continue to move the needle, including, hoping to get a better year out of your tight end that you didn't get last year, right?
That would help.
So I think you kind of piecemeal these little things together, and those things all have moved the needle in some way or another. I think, obviously, as we've said, the final piece of this is still to kind of go out there and make sure you get another pass catching weapon.
All right, that is it for today's show. We'd like to thank you for making Locked On Cowboys your first listen every single day. Make sure you check out the channel on YouTube. Download the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We are free and available on all platforms. Check out the Locked On Cowboys squad shows as well that drop on Monday and Thursday. Landon and I will continue to do a deep dive of this draft over the next couple of weeks. We're going to look at each player in a different light. We'll make sure we do some analytics here. We'll look at the undrafted free agents probably next week. So I know the draft is over, but it's still a busy time here on Locked On Cowboys. Follow Landon on Twitter at McCool BCB. I'm at Marcus _Mosher, and we will see you right back here tomorrow.